Here's the story about a guy who spent 2 years with a woman who thought his feelings were optional. And when she finally said it out loud that he didn't get a say in their relationship, he did something most people don't have the guts to do. He simply agreed with her and left the relationship. This one's titled, My Girlfriend Told Me I Don't Get a Say About Her Choices, so I stopped having one. Original story, let's begin. Okay, so I've never posted here before, and I'm kind of just doing this to get it out of my head because I can't sleep. I understand that situation where you have something bothering you, something you need to share to clear your head. So we are here to listen. I've been with my girlfriend, I will call her C, for about 2 years. Things have been good for the most part, not perfect, though she can be dismissive sometimes when I try to bring up stuff that bothers me. But I figured that was just a communication thing we'd work on. So last Tuesday, I had a normal day. She had been stressed about work all week, and I decided to surprise her. I made her favorite pasta, this arrabbiata she loves from a place we used to go to on weekend dates. I basically figured out the recipe. I showed her favorite wine, set the table properly, and I was actually excited about it, which feels embarrassing to admit now. Romantic boyfriend. My girlfriend, now ex, gets home at 7:30 p.m. I was at the stove. I turned around smiling like an idiot, and she's standing in the doorway in a dress I've never seen her before. Full makeup, heels, hair's done, already on her phone. She doesn't really look at me, she just goes, "Oh, yeah, I'm going out tonight, don't wait up." Wow. Okay, let's get this for a second. This young guy cooked pasta from scratch, figured out her ex favorite restaurant recipe, showed her favorite wine, set the table, and he was excited about it. Now, the girlfriend walks in, dressed for a night out, and doesn't even look at him properly. You know, that feeling where you prepared a nice dinner for you and your partner, and she doesn't even acknowledge it. I understand that people are allowed to make plans. People are allowed to go out. I'm not saying she needed his permission, but the way this is described, she didn't forget to tell her boyfriend. She just didn't bother. And I've understood that there is a difference between freedom and just not considering someone else exists. Keep that in mind because this particular place we are is where the drama in this story starts. I asked where, and she said her ex. I will call him N. He's in town, and a group of them are going to some club. Now, here's the thing you need to know about M. He's not just some ex. M is the guy she was completely broken over when I met her. Like, I spent months helping her get over N. He treated her badly and then disappeared. She cried about him constantly in the early stages of us dating. I told her visiting her made me uncomfortable, not aggressively. I was genuinely calm. I said something like, I'm not trying to tell you what to do. I just feel disrespected when it's him specifically, and you know why. She signed like I was the most exhausting person she had ever encountered and said, if I don't go clubbing with my ex, if I want to go clubbing with my ex, I will. You don't get a say. That is what freedom is. And then she just looked at me, waiting for me to either explode or back down. I didn't do either. I just said, okay, you are right. And she looked a bit thrown by that, but just left anyway. Okay, I want us to be careful here in this part of the story because I think people are going to split hard on this. One side will say she's right. She can go anywhere she wants. He doesn't owe her. Technically, yes, that's true. But here's what I think people miss. He didn't say she couldn't go. He made it. She said it made. He said it made him uncomfortable. He expressed a feeling, and her response to that feeling was, "You don't get a say." For me, that's not a freedom argument. That is a dismissal. There is this massive difference between I hear you, I'm going anyway, and your feelings on this doesn't qualify as something I need to acknowledge. The first one is a woman who values her autonomy. The second one is a woman who doesn't value her partner. And that's what he actually heard. That's what broke something in him. I'm not saying she's a monster, no. But what I'm saying is, if someone has to weaponize the concept of freedom to shut down your feelings, then something is wrong somewhere, and you ought to take note. Now, I stood in the kitchen for a few minutes. The pasta was still on the stove, and I just thought, I don't actually want to be here when she gets back. I don't want to have this fight at 2 a.m. and I don't want to do any of this anymore. So I packed my bag, not dramatically, I wasn't throwing stuff around. I was weirdly calm about it. I took my clothes, my laptop, my documents, the book I was reading, left my key on the counter and wrote, "Enjoy your freedom" on a piece of paper and left it there because honestly, what else will you even say? I calmly drove to a hotel and went to sleep. She came home at 4 a.m. and I wasn't obviously there. She left the house around 7:30 p.m. and from 7:30 to 4 a.m. there was no communication. She didn't call to know how this guy is doing. Uh, she expects to come back 4 a.m. and meet the same guy. No, 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 no. I don't think that's the. I don't think that's right. You know, sometimes people don't explode because there's nothing left to explode. The hope is already gone, and when hope goes quietly, so do you. But was leaving the right call? I think so, but I'll be honest. I wish he had said more before walking out. Not to fight, no, just so she couldn't later claim she didn't understand what happened. Because as we'll see later in this story, she absolutely tried to reframe the whole situation. Update 3 weeks later. So she called from a number I didn't recognize about a week after I left. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was basically, "Where are you? This isn't funny. Call me." Annoyed, not upset, not apologetic, annoyed, like I done something inconvenient to her. I deleted the message. Few days later, a text from another unknown number. "I get you are making a point. You can come back now and we can actually talk about this." I stared at that message for a long time. "You can come back now." Like the whole thing was a tantrum she was generously agreeing to overlook. I didn't reply. This world, you can come back now. I keep coming back to that line because it tells you everything about how she understood the relationship dynamic. She wasn't reaching out because she was sorry, no. She was reaching out because things were inconvenient without him there. There's a complete, that's a completely different thing. And most people never stop to notice the gap between these two. Sorry sounds like said something that dismissed you as a person, and I've been thinking about it and I was wrong. But what this lady sounds like was, okay, your protest is noted, you have made your point, you can return to normal now. She thought this guy, OP, was staging a demonstration. She hadn't even considered he might actually be just gone. So Jane, a friend who I always knew was more than her friend and mine, called me and told me what I did was emotionally abusive. And you can't just disappear on someone after 2 years. That I owe C a conversation. I thought about that. I really did. And then I thought about the fact that C had an entire conversation available to her before she left that night. She chose that conversation, not me. I told Jane there was nothing to discuss and hang up. Final update. About a month after I moved in, about a month after I moved in, a guy from my gym mentioned he knew people in M's cycle. M was only visiting for the weekend and had already been telling his mates C was convenient for what he wanted and left Sunday morning without saying a word to C. She had been posting sad stuff online apparently. Although I didn't feel good about that, but I didn't feel bad either. It's just sort of confirmed what I'd already understood about the situation. All right, I'm not going to pretend there isn't something painful about this part of the story because obviously there is. She traded someone who was cooking her favorite meal on a Tuesday for a guy who was already describing her as convenient to his friends before the night was even over. I'm equally not saying she deserved that treatment because nobody deserves that. But I don't think there is something important here about what she was actually chasing. M wasn't just an ex. M was a feeling. She was chasing the feeling of being chosen by someone who doesn't choose people easily. And that feeling is very addictive in a way that a genuinely good relationship sometimes just can't compete with it. Well, this is not OP's failure. It has to figure out. 6 months after I left, I was at a cafe working when she called from yet another number. I answered. I don't totally know why. She was crying or close to it. Her voice was really different. All the confidence was just gone. She said she had been stupid, that M was nothing, that I was everything, that she hadn't meant what she said. I told her I thought she had meant it. She said she was testing me or scared or something. She wanted to meet, said the flat felt empty. I said I was busy. She got upset. Wow. Like, said I was a coward for just disappearing, that I didn't fight for her, that I packed my little bags and ran away. I let her finish, then I said, "You told me I didn't get a say, so I stopped having one." That's all that happened. That word testing, I've thought about it a lot, and honestly, it made me more sad than angry because what kind of relationship do you think you are in if you are secretly running tests on your partner? What does that say about the trust or the lack of it? And the thing is, even if we take her at her word, even if it really was some subconscious fear response and not calculated manipulation, it doesn't actually change what happened. No, it doesn't. The words came out of her mouth. This OP heard them and they meant something to him. You don't get to walk that back just because your intentions were complicated. As for the word coward, I understand why he didn't engage with it, but I will say this. There's a version of fighting for someone that looks like staying and arguing, and there's a version that looks like refusing to keep auditioning for a role you have already earned. And I think OP chose the second one. I don't think that is cowardice, no, or do you think so? I think that is someone who finally understood their own value. Whether he communicated that well enough along the way, that's the more that's the more complicated question though, and I don't think he had disagreed. The worst part is that about a week later, I was at the same cafe with someone I had started seeing. We were just talking, laughing, normal stuff, and she walked in. She looked rough, not in a mean way, just she looked tired. She saw me, and for a second, her whole face kind of opened up. Then she saw I was with someone, saw that I was genuinely laughing and not performing it. We made eye contact, maybe for a second. I didn't smile or looked away dramatically or anything. Just kind of registered her the way you register anyone in a room. Then I went back to my conversation. I heard the door go a minute later and I didn't look. I don't have a neat ending to it. Just doing okay, better than okay on most days. And that's all that really matters. Okay, OP said he doesn't have a neat ending to this, and I respect that he didn't try to, manufacture one. Because the truth in this story doesn't, the truth is, this story doesn't end with a villain getting what she deserved or a hero riding off into the sunset. This story ends with a guy who was quietly diminished for a long time, who finally stopped shrinking and who is now, by his own admission, just okay and better than okay on most days. And honestly, that's the most realistic version of healing I've ever read in a while. He's not thriving in a moving mortgage, he's not bitter, he's not posting tweets online. He just built something small and steady and his. And when she walked into that cafe and saw OP smiling with what he had built, she understood in about 3 seconds what 2 years of being with him should have taught her. Some people only recognize what they had when they see it belonging to someone else completely. And that's the part that stayed with me in this story. That's where this story ends. No grand speech, no dramatic revenge. Just a man who finally decided his peace was worth more than the relationship. And honestly, that might be the most powerful thing about it. But I want to hear from you. Do you think OP did the right thing by leaving without a word, or did he owe her a proper conversation before walking out? Drop it in the comments. I read everyone, and I genuinely want to know where you stand on this one. Gideon, and you are watching Official Costly. If this story hits different, please make sure you are subscribed because we do this regularly. We tell real stories, real talk, no sugarcoating, and I will see you in the next one.